Hello everybody, it's your favorite West Virginia in space here, and one of the things you see a lot in like superhero fans, especially, but other fans as well, is the concept of legacy characters. This, at least in this particular context, being characters who have been around for a sufficiently long period of time and are considered a mainstay of the franchise or story in question. This can, of course, is a variable definition, and some people use different ones. We're not exclusively talking about the concept of a mantle character in this case, just characters that have played a long part in a story and have been in, like I said, in a franchise for a considerable period of its runtime in various medium. But the thing is, I've seen a lot of complaints about them. Both people one of the most common ones is people saying that they're overused, that stories rely too much on their legacy characters. But then I see people also complaining, if not directly, about those legacy characters not being present when they don't show up. So, what's the conflict here? Why do people seemingly ask for one thing but want another? Well, let's get into that. Now, I think a good place to start is the complaints people give about legacy characters. One of the more common ones is that the characters simply become boring or all boring because it's just the same stories about the same characters doing the same things over and over again. The argument here usually being that either because the characters have lasted for so long that they become boring, and as such they should be replaced to find characters that are more interesting, or the characters were never interesting to begin with and the only reason they've lasted for so long is that no one's bothered to make a better character to take their place. This is a pretty common thing I've seen, but it does take a few slight variations and forms. The major one I've of course seeing is that insert old version of a character is lame, insert new version of a character is good, is being a pretty common one. But another variation I see in video games is quite common is when people complain that the roster of video games is too samey. That in between releases, the games really don't update the character roster much and stick mostly to the same ones. This is a complaint I saw with the Mortal Kombat NetherRealm trilogy, how at least some people complained there was just the same character showing up over and over again with relatively little change to the actual roster of the game. The general line of thought at the end of this kind of discussion is that if a franchise does not change up its roster and characters and all that jazz, then the legacy characters will slowly bore out the story until there's nothing worth and the franchise will slowly die with a whimper. Now, there is, however, the other side of the aisle on this, being of course, people who think that the story needs its legacy characters constantly. This is generally a slightly rarer contingent, mostly seen like in the superhero stories of people who want a character to stay whatever mantle was originally given to it. Like, Bruce Wayne stays Batman, Clark Kent stays Superman, etc., etc. That kind of thing. But a slight variation can also be found in people who just really like the classic characters and their classic stories and don't particularly want them to change or adapt. This can take a few different forms, such as fans wanting the status quo to go back to basically an earlier point in the story, or this version keep its original legacy characters going on longer so they can enjoy the characters they like. Their main argument, of course, in this scenario is, of course, that the story will not be nearly as interesting by replacing its characters, and the legacy characters are important to the status of the franchise. So ultimately, we get two different sides here, and you can easily look up into both mentality just by looking up insert controversial opinion about story here, character change here. But this does lead to a more deeper question: is who is right and what is the proper path forward? Because I think we can both agree that both groups, at least in theory, want the characters in the story to do well. They want the story to succeed. They just have different views on it. So, which is the correct path? Now, I don't think there'll ever be a one-size-fits-all solution to this kind of thing, just because every story is different, every franchise is different, and how they relate to their legacy characters is also different, so it's just a different bag all around. But I think some general points to remember are quite simple. Is that legacy characters are usually some of the most beloved in a franchise and the reason people come to enjoy them. Like, there's a lot of things you can come for to enjoy a story, but one of the biggest ones is characters. And even other things like plot and setting can be radically different based on the characters in question. Like, a story about the Avengers is different than the Justice League, even if they take place in a world that's pretty similar in a lot of ways. Just because the characters involved are different, the hijinks and shenanigans they get up to are different just because of who the characters in question are. And that's the thing about legacy characters too, is that because they are so integral to a franchise, or at least long-loving, they have their fans. People love legacy characters, at least in most cases, for various reasons, but they generally do. It comes back to a thing I heard about killing off a character, is that any character you kill off is someone's favorite. No matter how insignificant, any character you've named that you killed off later is a character that somebody came to the story for and is going to be deeply disappointed by them dying. And writing a character out or killing them is kind of the same way in this case, is that no matter any legacy character you get rid of in any way, shape, or form is fundamentally going to turn some people off of the story. Like when I first heard of the Marvel Avengers video game, which, by the way, terrible title, but when I heard that Captain America died in the first part of the game, I was a lot less interested in the video game. Now, of course, it pretty much came out almost instantly that Captain America was still playable and he wasn't dead and all that jazz. But the point is, that was a good example. Because even I, like I said, I'm a fan of the Avengers stuff. When I heard there's going to be an Avengers game without Captain America as a playable character, I got a lot less interested in the game. Because I like Captain America. He's my favorite superhero. So, of course, here I wasn't going to get to play him or see him in the story really was sad. Of course, it wasn't really true, but the point is that's what the game led to believe. Which I think is a good microcosm of it, is that people love legacy characters and they want to see them. However, there is some truth that sometimes the character story is just over, and an entire franchise doesn't have to end just because a few characters leave or get replaced or whatever. And that's a valid truth, is that sometimes you do kind of run out of stuff to do with a character. Now, granted, a lot of that can, of course, be shifted away to just changing the dynamic of characters. Like Peter Parker, for example, doesn't always have to be a struggling teenager trying to do stuff. You can move forward with the characters, but sometimes there is a valid reason to just put the character to rest. Let them have a peaceful life and the story can kind of move on without them, or just have the story end, which is the ultimate end of legacy characters, is just having a proper ending to the story. But there's also the other kind of character end, which is character death. And character death is a powerful tool in a story, and any writer who tells you should never never be willing to kill off a character is just being not correct there. There are points to kill off a character, but it is the ultimate method of getting rid of a legacy character because you are physically removing them from the story more or less permanently. Of course, it depends on franchise, like someone dying in Marvel or Dragon Ball obviously isn't going to be the end of the story, but that's a different matter entirely. But there is a truth that you can bring in fresh stories with new characters by either pushing to the side the legacy character sometimes, and sometimes it lets you do things with the remaining legacy characters or tell new stories, or get different perspective on the world, or once again, whatever the ongoing story is. So there's obviously a reason to do both to keep legacy characters and to reintroduce new characters and possibly push legacy characters to the side. So, sadly, I don't have a good answer for you today. I can't just give you this ultimate wisdom of this is what you do and it will be a good story, because I just don't think that exists. I think the only real method is to simply keep both in mind. That there is a point to let a character go, but there's also a reason to let a character stay. And simply thinking about both and thinking about what path you want your stories to take should ultimately help you make the best decision. So ultimately, like I said, I can't just say to you what to do if you're writing a story or thinking about it. I think the only way is to really consider everything and weigh for yourself as a writer, as a storyteller, what makes the best story. And simply put, I think you'll find the best answer if you think it over. But ultimately, that's just my thoughts. What do you think about it? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you have your own thoughts? Well, please comment down below if you do. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Yeah. Hey, why don't you hit that sub button? You're gonna become a subscribble. Get to see my content quicker. Wouldn't that be nice? I bet so.